Okay. Well, let's see. Again, I'm Henry Wang. And this is how I got into CTFs. This is over here's my ubiquitous profile picture, which you probably have seen it. But yeah, let's see. So this is my name, and I'm also known as the Kid of Arcrania. There's 2 R's in there. Yeah, 2 R's. Some people spell it as 1 R. I kind of misspelled it when I first created the username, but it will just stick like that. And then on Twitter, I just have a separate handle. Looks kind of different. It's just because their character limit just capped off my full handle. So I currently play on Perfect Blue. And this is the logo. And I focus mainly on reverse engineering challenges. And that's actually, yeah, and last year we did pretty well. Let's see. I'm alumni to Planet West and Jasper. So, but I basically graduated from there a long time ago. It's like probably 4 years. Currently, I have a brother and a cousin in 12th grade right now, who is also in Planet West. Let's see. And then I wanted to put this out. It's just that a lot of what I present here is just partly related to me being a Christian, but then, of course, this is a school environment, so I'm just going to omit most of that. But if you want me to share more of that, I'll be glad to share that individually. Okay. So key points that I wanted to drive home. One of them is, with my experience, hard work is definitely important. But then I think it's also important to note that it's not always a direct translation to being successful. I would like to say many of the points where I just got further in what I've done is not due to any particular hard work that I've done, but it is actually just by luck, by chance, that I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And then one thing I would say is definitely try to focus on what you find interesting, not like what everyone else thinks is good. Because especially when you're doing cybersecurity, it's like you're going to have to go through a lot of learning different things. Just find something that you find that you want to learn. And that, I think, is the best motivator to really do well in this area. And then I want to say, along with that, anything that you learn, whatever you do, kind of you can probably still learn something from it. So it's not like complete waste. So I know there's maybe you might have a lot of projects that you didn't complete. Maybe programming languages you learned didn't really do much, but I think all of these kind of help you shape an even better foundation to learn other things. And with cybersecurity, again, it's like there's a lot of different paths you can take, and just learning things here and there, you're able to cover more ground, even if they're not completely successful. So I would like to start my kind of story back when I was in high school. So this was back when I was in Plano West, 11th grade. I started, or 11th, 12th grade, but I started ACS very late, kind of late. I never heard of it until that last year of my high school. That's when I started to hear, hey, this is something interesting I wanted to learn, wanted to do. But then, why do I stay behind the curve? Well, at that point, it was I look at these competitions. There's a couple of them that were high school oriented. Many of them had already had teams that were already very good. And they're almost always the same teams in the same area. Is usually either Maryland area, East Coast, or West Coast. or I think I've also heard a couple from down, what's it, Lhasa, I think. But basically, nothing in my area. No one at that point really was super good at cybersecurity, so I couldn't really have known about it and felt like I was really behind. So then I entered college. Again, I thought there were people who would be interested, who was experienced, had many ears, but again, not really much help. So I think I was in college for like 1 or 2 years, haven't been really able to do much in CTF, and felt kind of disappointed. Especially when there were areas, I remember there were like different colleges where they have really cool security programs and like CTF teams. The one I'm thinking about is one at CMU. They have their plate CTF team and like stuff like that. I wanted to kind of have a team to be able to play with, but again, it was kind of set at that point. I didn't really have much to work with. So then at some point, I think I remember I was doing the CSAL quals with my UTD team, or more like I was just doing challenges on my own. Maybe some people were doing a couple of webs, but we didn't really do well. And I solved like maybe 1 or 2 challenges. Then out of the blue, I got this message on one of my Discord, and I spent this time, I dug up this message. It was like, this random dude from the internet. To be fair, this guy, I did not know this guy at all, but he basically said, hey, you want to join our team for the finals? And to tell you that I probably didn't view myself as really that good, because basically I didn't even qualify, and this felt like, why are you asking me, kind of thing. Yeah, that was pretty much my face at that point. And because the reason was, I didn't solve a lot of challenges. I wasn't really that good, but I guess he persisted. I was like, this is a very cool opportunity. So I remember it was that year when I was doing this competition. I was like, it was actually a very cool experience, because it was basically the first time I've been to like a finals competition on site, did the CTF in person, and I was like, that's a very cool experience, but I didn't even deserve it. Just to tell you that, I was like, I just got fished. So it turns out, after like working with this guy for a bit, he was from this team called DCUA. And let's see. I don't know why it didn't show that, but this was supposed to show a graphic of the back then DCUA was like top 5 team. I don't know why this didn't show, but basically at that point he was. Let me try this again. Give me a sec. Okay, let me present from here. Okay, forget it. So at that point, he was part of this team. Let me actually do this. Hold on.
Yeah, take your time. Get it however way you want it to be, and then you can continue.
Okay.
There's no need to hurry.
Watch this. Okay, let's do 6, 8. Okay, whatever.
It's okay.
7, 6, 8. Let me pull this up. So let me just do this way. So back then, this team was actually a very good team, because back in like 2019, 2018, this team was like, what, 5th place, and then the year before it was. Well, the year before, but it was basically consistently like top 10 of the entire world, basically. And at that point, I was like, wow, this is someone I felt like I was very privileged to join. But in the end, I was like, I'm just gonna join it because I was given this opportunity. But let me remind you one other thing is DCUA is not a US team. The UA part in DCUA is actually a Ukrainian, stand for Ukrainian. So this is a Ukrainian team that I was joining, which was even more kind of interesting. But anyways, I consider myself very lucky because previously I was trying to form my own team or like just find some like-minded people because by creating this organization at my university called TAG, which is now defunct because reasons. But that was unsuccessful. So I ended up joining this team instead. At some point, at this point, I was doing a lot of competitions and really, again, was still in that mode where I was really, really in awe of like, wow, I'm able to work on this team that's like one of the top ranking teams in the world. But turns out, while at some point it was like a top team, a lot of people just stopped playing and left the team. So now we ended up with the second-rated team, which was still good, which was still a very good. There was still a lot of talent here, but it was I ended up involving myself a lot in the team, trying to do a lot of the challenges, and that kind of burnt me out. And we decided we wanted to find, me and Knapsack, which we became very close, we decided to hunt for some people to collaborate with. I think throughout this hunt, we ended up finding one of our biggest successes was finding two other people who were also like they weren't part of any team. And then we just asked them to join with us. And then we became this 4 people like kind of work together. And that was really good to work with different people. But then while I wasn't picky with what I have right now, we decided it was probably better to just leave the team and find a new team. But we didn't know what to do at this point until this internship that I obtained. This was like my second one. The way how I got it was kind of a completely different story, but I basically got this job located in Florida. What the heck? I do not know what. So, Florida. Okay. Where the heck? Okay, let's try this again. So I got an internship in Florida, and this was okay. I don't know what the heck. Presenter is being very weird. Okay, whatever.
Just roll with it.
So this was Melbourne. It's kind of cut off here, but basically there were like lots of companies here. So during this time, I was on this intern. I met this guy whose nickname was CTS. Just call him Steven. He was also working nearby another company called Vector 35, which I didn't know at the time. It turns out that particular area in Melbourne is like this huge little area. Is like this little area where a bunch of ex-Raytheon employees who didn't want to work with them anymore, and then they just created their own company. So I think there were like a bunch of these. There were like a handful of these companies, all located in the same place. So this was, and I was doing this internship, which is like a VR, which is not the virtual reality. It's a vulnerability research thing. So yeah, back to the story. I met this dude, Steven, and what was cool was that summer, my team, DCUA, and then his team, which was Perfect Blue, both qualified for one of the CTFs, which was a finals event in Sweden. And I think at some point I was congratulating this other team, which I knew I knew some of the people, kind of knew who were on it, but I didn't really know, really acquainted with them. But anyways, I was like congratulating them that they also made it into the competition, the finals event. But then just talking a little bit back and forth, we actually figured out that one of their teammates, Steven, actually were interning in the same location as I was. So we both just ended up meeting up like about a couple times before the actual competition, and we got to know each other. And then later on, I ended up playing with them on like a random finals event. And then at that point, I realized this was a team I wanted to join. And so eventually we just used our influence from DCUA and just took off all the good players, and then to join Perfect Blue, which was I think very, very douche move, but it was whatever. So let's see. So at the end of 2019, we cut ties from DCUA, and I just played from Perfect Blue. And I think that was kind of our start to this really cool collaboration. Since then, we've grown a little bit bigger, but still pretty much the same size, kind of medium-sized team. And we've been able to do very well, just moderately well. Some of the kind of what you call trophies that we hold. It's like, there was a time when we basically have this like wall of first place, which was very cool. Because most of these, even while we were playing, we didn't really anticipate being able to get first place in every single thing. And to be fair, I think two of these events, we actually, these two events, we actually collaborated with another team to play together. And then we managed to be able to get first overall that particular year, 2020. So that was pretty cool. It probably won't happen again, but it was great while it lasts. And I can't say I did everything, but it was still very very, very good experience to go through. And yeah, so now I'm going to go through a different lens, kind of explain a little bit of how I got there. So I took this idea from, I watched this video from Live Overflow basically saying, you basically have, like when you're doing cybersecurity, it's almost like you're exploring like a maze. And then whatever you're doing, you're going to get lost a little bit, but it's just to do well is you just have to keep trying to work through the maze until you finally get somewhere. And I kind of like to think of this as like a web of kind of knowledge that you have to attain. But it's something where you could learn something one day and then kind of go back and forth, different things. So first of all, I would say the first thing I learned Visual Basic. This was a long time ago, but this was back when that was still kind of one of the most popular languages. So then the first thing I did was GUIs, and back then my programs were very bad. Fudge. What is this? Okay, let me see if this might. I don't know why the pictures are all going out very poorly. Give me a sec.
Yep, take your time.
I don't know why this, you know what? Screw this. Let me do it this way. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, what the heck? Presenter, why do you have to do like this? Okay, let's just do it this way. There's not much animation. Let's pull this up. So let me just try to zoom in on this thing. Okay, so, so yeah. Basically, back then, when I was when I was like doing this stuff, I was doing this like very shitty GUI, and these were like very bad. These were probably the two of the more interesting, more complete things that I did. This thing was actually a Frankenstein of a project. Because you know why? The original concept was very shitty. It was basically just you have a bunch of numbers. The program gives you numbers, a math problem, and you solve it. And you know what was even worse was I was like, it was a cool idea to add in more things. Just add whatever I want, whatever I learned, and then I just added to that kind of thing. And it was basically very broken, not very useful. And then the other thing I did was I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. Let me try to emulate this Dance Revolution thing that except on the keyboard. And that was what that was. It was kind of a better project, but it was also a meh one. And let me tell you, I basically explored like my previous projects, and this is what it looked like. There was like a lot of projects that didn't even make it to the cut of wasn't even at all like usable. Yeah, the next thing I learned was let's learn some Java, but yeah, Java was way too hard at that point. I'll admit, inheritance was hard. Trying to figure out what's the difference between classes, abstract classes, and interfaces, that was kind of hard work. And the book that I read from wasn't really helpful because that was the first thing they taught, which I thought, why do you teach this very difficult concept first? But okay, it's whatever. So at that point, I was like, let's just learn JavaScript then. So I started HTML first, and then I jumped to JavaScript, and I basically didn't really look at Java for a while. And then I looked at Node.js, which was also kind of cool thing. And then at some point I was like, I bought a new book and then kind of relearned Java again. And yeah. And oh yeah, let's see. Let me try this. Oh, fudge. Let me try this. Maybe now it will work. Okay, cool. So now I was like, let's learn. I was learning a bit of graphics, and this was one of the projects I did. I was like, I think I installed this on some person's Mac device, the screensaver. I was like, cool idea. Let me try this out. And yeah, that turned out like that. It turned out okay. It wasn't really good, but I still liked it. And then I also learned through that. I had to learn. There was one thing I highlighted for here was I learned this thing called JNI, which allowed me to interface Java with C++ and stuff. And the reason why I had to do that was because I had to, if I wanted to make a proper screensaver, and you had to work with Windows API, which was very hellish, to say the least. But yeah, so here. Oh, and then I also made a crappy 2048 clone back when it was a thing. And then this was probably one of my favorite, more nice projects. Was I think during my senior high, I used to create this messenger app, which you would send messages, and then it would store it to a file, which you could store it on the shared drive. I don't know if the high school still have shared drives, but basically that was a thing. And what was cool about it was I was also learning encryption and like cryptography with this project because I wanted to keep all the messages secret, encrypted, and you can only read it if you're the intended receiver. But turns out, if you do that, there are some people who will misuse it. So I was like, oh, I remember a very interesting issue with that because I think someone would be writing like inappropriate messages or stuff like that. But so like here I have like a lot of projects, and a lot of these are not very complete, and they're not very, and they look complete, but they're kind of broken inside. And there's actually a lot more projects that I attempted here, but didn't show it because there wasn't anything to show. So there's like a lot of projects where I did, but it was like complete failure. And a lot of these things aren't even original. They were just something I thought was interesting when I saw somewhere else, and I wanted to emulate that. And the reason why I'm bringing all these things is these are not kind of security related, and they're just programming stuff. But here now I have like a very good base to learn other things on top of that. And I would say if you have good programming skills, you can then translate that into good cybersecurity skills. Because when you're a hacker, you basically just break stuff that other people written. And if you know how to write, then you know how to break it. Or you have a better idea how to break it. Though I would say, on the other hand, you don't necessarily have to be a good programmer to do this. You can just learn programming and then like hacking at the same time. But the way how I learned it, I just learned programming first, because I actually learned the hacking part very late on, opposed to my programming.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
So what we're saying right now is mainly from the perspective of like pwn and reverse engineering, which obviously requires really good programmer skills. But there are lots of other like areas in cybersecurity that don't really require programming skills at all. So just because you don't know how to program or you don't like programming doesn't mean that you're like automatically excluded from the field. But if you want to get into exploitation and like the typical hacker stuff, then you should have a good programming foundation. Like if you want to mention other stuff than just Rev, you can say it now. Like there's web exploitation. I mean, you're the presenter, so I'll let you talk.
Yeah. I mean, even web is you kind of have to know like the languages, but
yeah, not web, but like crypto forensics.
Crypto, yeah. Yeah, there are other things. I didn't really focus much on them, so I can't really say much about it. Mm-hmm. But I think the first CTF, I kind of hinted at it. No, I didn't. But this was one of the first CTF. And I think I was, at this point, I was like, I think a friend introduced to me this CTF event. And I thought it was very cool. It was just problem solving. And when I was doing CTF originally, I think my thought about it, I didn't even think about it was hacking, because all I thought about it's just problem solving. You're just doing very interesting problems, and the thought of it just equating to hacking was actually much later on, when I actually realized, oh wait, what I'm doing is actually just kind of that kind of stuff. So like, what I'm saying is, cybersecurity really isn't just about that cool, like, who I'm hacking like someone's website, someone's Facebook account or something like that. It's usually not that flashy, but it's more about just, can you solve like really weird problems, or try to solve like break other people's kind of things. So like you're working in the opposite direction as like someone who's building something up. And then I think another thing, what I was putting it here was, I think CTFs, you get to learn a lot of different things. And it helps you reinforce a lot of things that you learned, because when you're doing this, you're in this continuous feedback loop of, how do I do this? Let me just Google it. Oh, I got this thing. Now let me do something else to go further with this. And then you're going through this feedback loop because you're also kind of racing for points to compete against other people. And I think that kind of helps the learning process speed up. And with Pico CTF, I think it was like 3 weeks long kind of event. So I had enough time to work slowly at first, but then be able to learn a lot of things in that. And I think this is when I really started to learn how to use Linux, because before I was using Windows. I think most people started off with using Windows. But the reason why I ended up switching over to Linux is just because there's a lot of tools there that are very useful to help look at this stuff. I know for Pony and Rev part, any other, if you're like doing web or anything else, you probably might not find it as beneficial, or like there might be other things you can probably do on Windows. But especially when you're looking at binaries, if you're able to run it, it's always a plus, as opposed to like, I can't run this Linux binary, help. But anyways, next thing, another thing I remember was in Pico CTF, there used to be a lot of heap challenges, which even though we did pretty well on that particular competition for like high school, I did not know any heap, and I didn't even know like what kind of bug to look for with these challenges. So I basically was completely unable to solve those challenges that they have here. But then afterwards, I think after the competition, I think I started to be introduced to this, particular video YouTuber called Live Overflow. He does a lot of Pwn challenges, or Pwn like tutorials and stuff. Especially his heap stuff really helped me to learn that kind of stuff really quickly and kind of grasp the concepts. Though he tends to talk very, very, very fast. So if you are new to the subject, you probably need to watch it multiple times, maybe like slow down on that. And at this point, I also, before I knew a little bit of C++ because I was doing the JNI stuff, and that was like Windows C++ or Visual C++ or whatnot. But now, because I'm doing more low-level pwning stuff, I basically forced myself to learn C at this point. And another thing I found that was really cool was these war games websites where you basically just do problems at any pace that you like. And you're able to and it's like open like all year round, and you just solve the challenges. One of my first ones I've seen was Pwnable KR, which is a cool website if you are into pwning. Though I would say even back then, so Live Overflow, So initially I wasn't really good at Pwnable KR, just because a lot of this was new stuff. Linux stuff, pwning stuff, low-level C, assembly, pwning, all that stuff was new. So I really didn't have a good idea didn't even know what I was doing. But then at some point, I think it was during one of my internships, the first one, the one before the Raytheon one, I basically had a couple of colleagues help me kind of really push myself to learn more about this thing. So I think the part what I'm trying to get at this is just always try. I think it's good to, a lot of times you're not going to understand everything, and that's okay, because I think you just have to, a lot of this, you're just going to have to learn it and just slowly figure out how to solve these things. And it's not like something, if you know everything about the problem, it's probably too easy kind of thing. And for Pwnable KR, I think is very focused on pwning, but CTF Learn is more kind of a general, any kind of challenge, any kind of category stuff. And oh yeah, and then the other thing I really wanted to learn during that internship was I wanted to learn kernel, but I was like, basically at that point I was like, kernel is like that thing that runs under your computer that has a lot of code, and I don't want to. It sounds too complex. But then I remember even the first challenge I did with Pwnable KR, they had a bunch of kernel challenges. The first one I did was, I think it was syscall. I basically cheated and just looked at the solution. Because to tell you at that point, I basically didn't even know, even if I knew how to, like, what the bug was. I think I eventually figured out what the bug was, but then I didn't even know how to exploit it. So I just cheated, looked at the solution, and it was like, oh, I see. So at that point, I think it's also to note that even when there are challenges that you didn't get, just looking at the solution after like struggling with it a little bit helps you to learn other things that you probably wouldn't have otherwise. And I think eventually, I remember I did another kernel challenge later on, a more difficult one, and I actually ended up solving that one. And I think it's really been nice to be able to just kind of see from where I didn't know anything, and even when I wasn't able to really figure out that, was able to just kind of solve the challenge just from kind of learning as I go, basically. And then, yeah, I got lazy, didn't want to draw any more webs, but I hope you kind of get the gist of what I'm trying to say. But to summarize, yeah, there's a lot of dependencies in the stuff that you learn. So obviously, what you're going to learn is going to probably be confusing and fragmented. But I think it's always cool to, if you can keep focusing on that and and while you're at it, try to learn why it works and try to dig down the rabbit hole. And you often find very cool things that you never knew. And then whatever you learn that you did gain, you can use that as foundation so that other things won't be as hard to learn. And then I generally like CTFs because they encourage you to just push on, try to do the challenge, even though you probably feel like completely like this is not your skill level. You're way under the skill level to solve it. But then I think it's always helpful to when you use CTFs, you learn a lot more. And I also encourage finding teams. There's probably a lot of people in this particular community that you can probably work together. And I tend to like teams because A, you can bounce ideas off of each other, and B, you can have more motivation if you work together. Even if you're solving different categories or different types of challenges, I think there's a lot of motivation that you can get. It's like, hey, I can solve all these challenges, just work on this one challenge. And yeah. So I think that is the end of my presentation. Are there any questions that you'd like me to answer?
I have a couple, but I'll wait for anybody else that has questions.
Okay.
Anybody have questions or comments? How do you feel about it? You don't have to necessarily have questions, but like, you can give feedback too.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can even criticize that there's something I should have done that I didn't do.
You might have mentioned this, but like I had to go to the restroom for a second. So like after like programming, like what specifically do you think like we should do to like get started on cybersecurity? Because like I have some programming experience, but I don't have much on cybersecurity.
I think that depends more on. I think I would say just try to look at some challenges, try to solve them. Maybe do like a CTF or something. But just try to get your hands dirty, I would say. If you are asking for like stuff to learn, it depends what subject, what category. If you're doing like Pong Rev, definitely Live Overflow. His older videos, I would say, are more tutorial based. If you're looking at other things like maybe web forensics and that stuff, sorry, I'm not as experienced on that. So I'm not exactly sure what YouTubers are or what resources for that.
The thing is, a lot of people haven't really had experience to know what they want to do yet. So we can't really say,
Fair.
if you like web, if you like Rev, do this, do that, because they don't really know what they like yet. So my suggestion would be go through the Pico CTF problems. They're open throughout the whole year after the competition ends.
Oh yeah.
So you can see what you like, what you want to learn. It's at a good difficulty too. It's not throwaway like CyberStart. That's my opinion. Let's see what Henry thinks.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I think Pico CTF is definitely. I think they do a very good job of like giving really easy, like beginner friendly challenges. I know. I remember with Pico CTF, it was like 2016 or something when I was like they've basically done like 2 events in the past 2 years ago and 3 years ago in my vantage point. I wanted to experience that, but even just looking at their challenges, it helps me to learn, kind of figure out a lot of the basics.
Yeah, so Pico CTF is a great resource.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions? Oh, and Henry, you can talk about CSG if you want. You didn't really mention what CSG was or like what you do with it. So you can bring that up.
Oh yeah. My bad. Well, CSG is the organization for cybersecurity if you go to UTD. But we also have this program that is open to everyone. This is the CTF workshop stuff, where we present something. We present like some basic CTF topics on all the different types of categories, and we do that every week on Fridays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We also do have a mentorship program, but right now I believe we are full. But if you want to wait a semester or whatnot, we probably will try to. We might cycle in new mentor stuff. But yeah.
And if you want more information about that or anything that Henry just presented, you can reach out to him. He's part of our Discord server. Yeah, Nathan, see you later. So if you need anything, you can like feel free to PM him or just send a text in the server, and then we'll be able to respond. So.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. If you just reach me, the guy that has this profile picture. Let me enlarge it. Is the black one? You'll definitely find it in the Discord.
We have your first name and your first name and your last initial, so they'll find you, and a UTD after it. That's your nickname on it.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, very obvious.
Okay. So, if nobody else has questions, I have like 2 questions. So since you're focusing mainly on the Rev stuff, and you forced yourself to learn C after all the heap challenges, where did you learn C from? Because I know from experience that there aren't that many clear-cut resources for C as there are for, say, Java or C++.
I mean, I think, first of all, I would say C, just like the syntax and basic syntax and stuff like that, that is something that you can learn if you just learn Java or something that looks C-like. If I say the biggest difference between like C and like Java is the pointer stuff, and I think that's a big thing. With that, I honestly don't
C's
really.
not object oriented.
Oh yeah, C is not oriented.
It's a procedural programming language, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically with C you don't have classes and stuff like that. But I think the hardest thing you're gonna have to work with is pointers. I honestly not really sure how you would if there are any good resources on that. But I know nowadays there's definitely a lot of like if you look up just tutorials, there's some out there, but I'm not sure how good they are.
Like, what did you use personally? That's just what I asked.
Oh, what I use?
What did you do?
When I used, well, I mean, I think I just learned it. I honestly don't remember.
Oh wow. Okay.
I feel like it's just brute force. But it's really hard to remember, hard to say.
I mean, pointers you don't just pick up on from seeing syntax. Like, I can understand if somebody picks up C syntax. It's really similar to Java. I mean, just add a hashtag in front of the import statement, int main instead of like having a public static void main, or you could also do void main. So it's similar to Java in syntax, but like you don't just learn pointers from osmosis. So how did you learn pointers then?
I mean, I think with pointers, I think it's just the more. I actually don't remember because it might be either. It could be that I picked up pointers much later on, so like maybe college or like right before college. But because if I remember correctly, most of the more basic like C that I had to learn was just it was just like the basic pwn stuff, and there's not a lot of pointers isn't as important. Though I think what was hard was learning the pointers and referencing in assembly. That was probably harder.
That's what I thought you were going to say. Learning assembly.
Yep, I think, yeah.
And then your coursework in school is also useful, right? Like, didn't you have to take systems courses and computer architecture courses and stuff?
With those, honestly, I would say I've done CTFs before I've done most of the coursework.
Right.
So it's actually the other way around. The fact that I had experience with CTF helped my coursework to be easier.
So what kind of background computer knowledge do you need for CTFs? Like in terms of computer organization, architecture? Let's say for Rev. Let's not say CTFs. Let's talk about Rev and Pwn specifically.
So I would say if you want to start from like learn the most fundamental information, go build up, you would have to learn like computer architecture, definitely, like have a class with like assembly. You definitely at some point you want to learn Linux and Unix kind of. I think in our university you have this Unix in C in a Unix environment kind of thing.
There's a course for that. Yeah, there's a Dartmouth course just like that. Okay.
You probably at some point would be nice to learn operating systems, but that is maybe more if you're looking at kernel stuff. And then otherwise, like my point is there's a lot of things that you could learn, but you're probably not going, if you want to learn CTF at this point, you're probably not going to cover all of these.
Yeah, but it's generally good to know like system stuff. That's why I asked, just so I know like what the background is. Because I'm actually thinking of doing. You've probably heard of NAND to Tetris, right?
Oh yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing that this summer. I already have a lot of, like, thanks to being brought up around Linux computers. I have good enough background knowledge, and I'm also reading like a couple of books that go deeper into Linux. Like I'm reading this book called How Linux Works. I have some command line knowledge too. Like, pretty much it's just like doing stuff at this point, I guess. The CTF challenges, Pwnable, Live Overflow videos. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And specifically with Live Overflow, if we're looking at pwning or binary stuff, he did like a binary series channel or series like playlist, and that was basically where I learned from. So that's probably what you can start with. His later videos, I honestly feel like aren't as technical.
They're more YouTube videos than they are technical.
Yeah, they're more YouTube. Yeah.
And then lastly, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I just if you're looking at more technical stuff, look at the more older videos that he did.
Okay. And then lastly, you said that you got books and stuff for Java, so I assume you're somebody who learns from books, right?
Yeah, I would say that, because I think I used to, especially back when I learned programming, I had like a couple books when I started learning Visual Basic. I like a book I read from for Java, maybe a book for JavaScript. Yeah.
But like nowadays, is there anything that's useful?
I would say right now,
or not necessarily right now, but like you're saying
nowadays, I would say like there's a lot of websites, tutorials, that cover a lot of these languages. Because back then I didn't really use the internet back then. Let me actually stop presenting.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's lots of online tutorials and stuff for programming languages, but there's less for architecture or less for like learning C with respect to Linux. There's less online courses and resources for that. Like, I already know how saturated it is for learning a programming language online. But yeah.
For like assembly, it's very hard.
Yeah.
The way I think I remember the way I learned it was I just basically just started took like some programs, which was the CTF challenges, and then dumped the assembly on a piece of paper and then just printed out and like wrote over it. I would say a lot of the assembly is just guessing what the mnemonic means, what it's doing. So like, for example, MUL is like multiplication, and then add is just add addition. Yeah. So like, I think with assembly, a lot of it is just trying to take all the like the high level languages, they have all the operations, and try to break it down into like very simple instructions.